Thank you for staying with Daybreak. Let's continue that discussion. Javas Bigambo, political commentator, is still here with us. Philip Omolo, law, governance and democracy expert, is also with us. And Elias Mutuma, advocate of the High Court. We're talking about where the rubber meets the road. The next deputy president, that is the conversation here. 2 weeks of jostling and lobbying. On the front page of the Daily Nation, you can see a list of them there. There's Anne Waiguru, there's Kindiki Kithure, there's Musalia Mudavadi, there's Rigathi Gachagua, there's the Speaker of the National Assembly, J.B. Muturi, on one side of Kenya Kwanza. Then on one Kenya Alliance, there's also this, there's Azimio team. There's Kalonzo Musyoka, Peter Kenneth, Martha Karua, Peter Munya, and also Charity Ngilu there who features. Frederick Okango here, who's the KANU's political affairs secretary, says that while democracy is based upon the conviction that there are extraordinary possibilities in ordinary people to lead, however, when it comes to electing a president, Kenyans will not gamble with a long list of wannabes. Let's start with this list and let's talk about them one at a time. And I'll start with you, Omolo. On one side, there's Anne Waiguru. And on the other side, there's Martha Karua.
Yes.
Which advantages do they bring to both sides? Let's start with the Kenya Kwanza team.
Well, you know, the good thing is that those two names you mentioned have also had a chance to contest for office in Kirinyaga themselves in 2017. During their campaigns, we could see the clarity in personality. Anne Waiguru was there because she had been popular just before the elections on issues which were not very good. And there was a lot of protest by Martha Karua and even a lot of people of Kirinyaga that a person of Anne Waiguru's character and all ought not to get. That was where the debate was during that time. And Martha Karua was also trying to run on a clean personality. She's above board in terms of her work in the public space. And it's not just something that is being claimed. Kenya we got our right for political participation literally in 1992 with the repeal of Section 2A of that defunct constitution. We know that Martha Karua's voice was there. She was there in the streets. She ran for liberation of this country. And even in the run-up to the 2010 constitution, we can tell Martha Karua's handwritings in that constitution. When she held office as a Minister for Justice and Constitutional Affairs, we know the kind of work she did towards helping Kenyans get that new constitution. On the other side, again, on Martha, again, human rights. We've seen her stand up for human rights. We've seen she's a woman who has distinguished herself in the political space in public affairs. On the other side, Anne Waiguru was largely in the private sector. I think with the World Bank and then later in Treasury, but in the private space. We've never seen her raise a finger when human rights are being abused in this country. We've never seen her participate in the political space when issues that matter to Kenyans are at stake. Then all of a sudden comes a new dispensation which avails a chance for people to be governors, offices that attract very heavy resources. Then she ran. Her election was challenged by Martha Karua, by the way. Let's not forget about that. And the petition was thrown out not on merit, but on technicality. Again, before long, we saw her face a vote of no confidence because of issues that are related to some of the allegations that had been made about her in the past. So when she survived that impeachment through a political process, that did not necessarily say that all the allegations against her were not true. So these are the people who are pitching against each other for the position of deputy president.
And that contest has been won by herself before. Because in the people of Kirinyaga chose Anne Waiguru. Do Kenyans even care about credentials anymore? Is it about popularity?
Elections, just because you are elected by people, it is not a clearance. Okay, that is at that level in Kirinyaga. We are now talking about the national level where we need people who can bring their voices to the real aspirations of the people of Kenya. I think at that point, Martha Karua would score very, very highly against Anne Waiguru.
Okay, but let me bring you back on this, because what he's saying is true. They contested, but she won, meaning that she has the popular vote.
Indeed, and I would like to say this. Both ladies have claimed their space at the national level. That's no doubt. When you look at Martha Karua, she's a lady who has served in government before, in very high profile. My worry is how she's going to relate with Raila Odinga, especially when it comes to matters such as amendment of the Constitution, when she has gone on record, rubbishing and, opposing the amendment of the Constitution, which Azimio still seems to be keen on doing even after they get to power. So I find that to be a very tricky situation for herself to put herself in. For Anne Waiguru, I think, she has tried a lot to claim the national space. And, at the beginning, they had their own differences with the DP. Those differences, you remember the catwalk talk, those differences seems to have been, dealt with internally, and we now see them, getting along together. But then I would also say this very quickly, that the choice of a running mate for Azimio is difficult. For Kenya Kwanza is still difficult, but I think for Azimio it is difficult in a different way, in that it must deal with some headaches within their house, because they seem to have promised almost every other partner that you're going for the running mate position, and that's why we are seeing demands as opposed to pleads. When you look at Azimio, people are making demands for that position. We've seen the coastal region, we've seen Ukambani, we've seen the Kikuyu community demanding for that position. And that might make us imagine that maybe that was part of the deal, and that was part of the negotiations as to why they joined Azimio. For the Kenya Kwanza team, it is not so much of a demand, but pleas being made to the deputy president that consider this and that. So I think for the deputy president, it's going to be a meticulous process. And having served in that position of a deputy president, I think for him, he has to be a bit mathematical in choosing his running mate, because he knows the challenges and he knows that it is important for you to work with someone. I mean, to pick someone you can work with.
All right. And Javas, we shouldn't forget also there's Charity Ngilu who's been lined up there. On one side, there's Anne Waiguru, there's Martha Karua on the other side, and Charity Ngilu. Who among them brings the best opportunity for that team? Who forms the best winning ticket?
Well, first, Trevor, the selection of a running mate is the first most important national decision that a presidential candidate makes. And that gives the people a barometer or a bearing of their priorities, their interests, their inclination, and what they believe in or what they don't believe in. For Raila Odinga, for William Ruto, their ultimate settlement on who is it amongst these candidates on their sides that they will have as a running mate will tell us what is it that they believe in and which direction their governance is likely to face, if at all the citizens confer upon them such opportunity to serve as the executive in this country. Secondly, we need to appreciate that the person of a running mate, potentially a deputy president, needs to help the president then to govern. With the benefit of retrospect from 2013 hitherto, we have seen the duo, Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto, working together in the first term and going separate ways, asunder, literally, politically, in this second term. Therefore, looking or casting our eyes on these potential candidates here, we ask ourselves, what weight does the persons on the right, or rather on the part of Azimio, bring, and what rights and benefits do they bring on the part of Kenya Kwanza? Now, the same way it was for Joe Biden in the year 2020, upon the death of George Floyd, the murder of George Floyd, and the critical issues affecting the black persons in the US, he settled first on the issue of race, electing, and he said prior that he'll choose possibly a person of color. Secondly, a woman. In this election, the issue of gender seems to be a bit entertaining in terms of being not particularly heavily consequential, but having a tilting effect in the outcome of this election. And that's why the names of persons such as Honorable Martha Karua, Senior Counsel, or Charity Kalukingilu, Governor. On the other side, Madam Governor Anne Waiguru.
Yeah.
Now, looking at Charity Ngilu, history has a place for her. A very colorful political career. She contested even earlier, in 1997, I think I remember Masaya Ngilu, her mantra. And she has been in the political arena since then, up to now, having served even in the cabinet, now as governor. Thing is this, Charity Ngilu seems to be challenging even the political authority of Kalonzo Musyoka in Ukambani. In fact, she is an alternative power base in Ukambani upon the exit, absolute exit of Kalonzo Musyoka. If Raila Odinga settles on Charity Ngilu, it will politically vanquish Kalonzo Musyoka. Kalonzo Musyoka, as we see him and how he has been making some demands, and even here he has been saying that he cannot attend the vetting process by the panel that has been constituted by the Azimio team. Kalonzo Musyoka feels he has got a paternalistic right to be Raila Odinga's running mate. And that, with that kind of attitudinal approach to the present situation within Azimio, it may be a bit difficult for Raila Odinga to think of Kalonzo Musyoka as a possible running mate because of the stance already taken.
But doesn't he have a point, having deputized him before?
The point is there, but I can't seem to see it. Now, as a matter of fact...
Invisible point.
Yes, as a matter of fact, he has served as vice president.
Yeah.
But remember that settling on the person of a running mate is a personal issue of the presidential candidate. It's not about your history.
Yeah.
It's not about your clout, so much personal. It is the decision of the running mate, or rather the presidential candidate, to determine who is it that they can have a quick chemistry to work together. Yeah. Who is it that will make the governance easier for them? Now, for example, I guess, when we look at William Ruto and Uhuru Kenyatta right now, we've seen that initially their primary goal was to win power, and they did. But now governance became a challenge for both of them. And ambition is something that is critical here. Kalonzo Musyoka considers himself a possible president for this country.
Yeah.
And so it is even with all these other candidates that are likely to be picked. Remember that somebody serving as deputy president is a president on attachment or pupillage. It is somebody who is actually rehearsing to be president. And the Constitution provides for the same. Yeah. That somebody in the office of the deputy president should be able to serve as president upon, say, for example, the demise of a president, resignation, incapacitation, etc.
Yeah. And
so, beyond the issue, of course, it will be a tricky issue to consider whether they want somebody very ambitious, as fellow counsel Elias has indicated here.
Yeah.
Deputy President William Ruto is in a very unique position. He is presently serving as deputy president, and he has got clearer lenses than even Raila Odinga on the issue of the office of deputy president. Will he want somebody who is exactly like him, better than him, ambitious as him, or perhaps less ambitious? As Mark Antony tells us in Shakespeare's play Julius Caesar, ambition is made of sterner stuff. The person to serve as deputy president must be somebody not only ambitious, but with sterner stuff in terms of the ambition burning their bosom.
Yeah.
And so when you look at Martha Karua, you will agree that she's somebody likely to bring credibility to the candidature of Raila Odinga if settled upon. And given that she believes strongly in the rule of law, it will be a plus. Remember that, for example, in 2012, when Republican candidate Mitt Romney was running for president, he settled on Paul Ryan for one reason, that Mitt Romney was not considered, even though having served as governor of Massachusetts, was not considered as having the experience of matters legislation in Washington or the affairs of Capitol Hill. And Paul Ryan, a ranking member of the Republican Party in the legislature, was best placed as a running mate, and they had critical chemistry. So here, Martha Karua will provide so much of the push, the position of the rule of law, constitutionalism on, and she's a fierce defender of the Constitution, that will be a plus for Raila Odinga's candidature.
Okay.
On the other side of Anne Waiguru, remember that she's a serving governor. Fellow Councillor Omolo here has indicated that various allegations have been cast upon her. But of course, we know that one is innocent until proven guilty. We're all lawyers here. And presently, of course, we know that matters of public service are increasingly dependent on private character. No court of law, competent court of law, has charged Anne Waiguru successfully.
Charged?
No, she has...
Convicted.
No, she has not been convicted. It has not been settled in law that she's not worthy of public service by way of Chapter 6 of the Constitution.
Yeah.
And so that's a critical issue to consider. But like I said, in the event that Raila Odinga settles on Charity Ngilu or Martha Karua, and William Ruto settles on Anne Waiguru, then it will bring an equilibrium on the gender issue.
Yeah.
But for instance, if William Ruto settles on Kithure Kindiki or JB Muturi, and Raila Odinga settles on Martha Karua, then while it will be an exciting race,
yeah,
it's possible that the gender effect will have a consequence on the outcome of the election.
Yeah, and Omolo, let me bring you in on this. Will that be a factor? Because if one side picks a female deputy president, will the other side automatically almost bend towards that as well?
Yeah, that's a very interesting angle to look at. We can see that the faces being presented are from very obvious regions. They are from around Mount Kenya. Now we are able to categorize as Mount Kenya West, Mount Kenya East. You can see that's where they come from, except for Musalia Mudavadi, who comes from our western region. But Trevor, let me bring to you something very interesting. There is a question on choosing a running mate, and there is also an issue of a deputy president. Those are two different things. A running mate might be convenient for getting votes and having you elected, and maybe clothing you with an element of legitimacy because it gives you a regional acceptance. But a deputy president that Javas has highlighted, who is supposed to be the principal assistant to the president, and the one that we say is actually a president in waiting, those are two totally different personalities. If you look at this constitutional democracy we talk about originated with the United States of America, when they first got their constitution in 1788, in 1789, George Washington became president. And the way they used to pick their running mate, this running mate concept also came from there. Two people would run for president. Whoever gets the most votes would be president, and the one who gets the second most would become a running mate. So the first running mate of George Washington was called John Adams. These guys never saw eye to eye. They never sat in a single cabinet meeting. Instead, George Washington picked on two young fellows, Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton. Those are the guys he used to run government for 2 terms. Then John Adams himself became president. And who became his second in command? Thomas Jefferson. They never saw eye to eye with each other. They never sat in a single cabinet. They never made any single joint decision. Adams served 1 term only, and he was thrown out. Then Thomas Jefferson himself became the 3rd president of America. And who became his deputy president? Aaron Burr. Never sat in a single cabinet. They never agreed. They never talked together. Instead, the Constitution of the United States makes the deputy president the head of the Senate. So these guys, the moment they do election, they would go to the Senate and do nothing within the executive. So that tells us that this position seems to be more of a running mate than a deputy president. So they don't expect to work together. They may, like Ruto has actually tried to work with Uhuru Kenyatta this far. Remember our very first vice president, Oginga Odinga, could not do much with Kenyatta. He had to resign. We can't remember the names of the rest. We don't know the vice president in Uganda. We don't know the one in Tanzania. That is how invisible this position can possibly be. But nonetheless, when we bring in the regional arithmetics and gender and issues of merit, you can see that Azimio is literally spoiled for choice. All the fellows who are possible candidates for this position in Azimio, they are people with serious credentials. When we talk about this deputy president position, the names that are in the mouths of Kenyans are all those coming from the Azimio side. I've seen Moses Kuria, who is apparently in Kenya Kwanza, campaigning for Martha Karua to be the deputy president. I've also seen the other day Moses Wetangula strongly campaigning for Kalonzo Musyoka to be the deputy president in Azimio. You can see that Azimio is literally spoiled for choice. All the guys who've been proposed are people with serious credentials. They have been in the political space. They've fought for liberation in this country, and they continue to fight for reforms in the electoral process.
All right. Mutuma, before we move on to the rest of the team, will the gender issue play a central role? Because we've always struggled with the 2/3 gender rule. This is an opportunity to start it right from the top.
Well, I think it will be a bold statement from either Raila or William Ruto if they picked, a female running mate, because somehow that boosts, the acceptance of women in leadership. So I think it's not something that we can ignore. And I think, like they have said, if Raila picks a lady for a running mate, then the other team will have, run for their money, because that is a tag that they must fight with. But then, like they have said, the running mate position is more like, picking a spouse. Yeah. It's not just about beauty. It's not just about, getting a partner to settle with. It's about someone you can work with for a lifetime, because the one term is a lifetime for a president. So I think we will pick a lot of lessons from Uhuru and William Ruto.
Yeah.
I mean, what went wrong with them? Was their choice good? Was the chemistry good? And how do we avoid falling into the same position? That's why I said it is more meticulous for the deputy president, because number one, he's the first holder of that office of the deputy president.
Yeah.
He knows the shortcomings of that office. So we should be listening more to him when he says who is qualified to be a deputy president, because he has served, and he has said himself that he doesn't wish anyone to serve as deputy president in a manner that he himself has served.
Yeah.
So I think we are yet to see a lot coming from that end.
Okay.
Yes.
Javas, J.B. Muturi, Speaker of the National Assembly, quite a high position, third in command. And then there's Kalonzo Musyoka on the other side as well, who says now he's not supposed to go for the vetting because he's way beyond that. That match, which one works? BP Ruto, J.B. Muturi, Raila Odinga, Kalonzo Musyoka, which is the winning ticket?
Well, first, Kalonzo Musyoka served as Mwai Kibaki's vice president in the now defunct constitution, where the president could hire and fire the vice president at will. Today, you can't. Today, Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto are joined to the hip. Whether they love each other or not, they have to live and die together unless one chooses to resign or God elects to pick one for himself. In the circumstances here, Kalonzo Musyoka then is forgetting that issues have changed. But if it's a question of creating tilts and balances, J.B. Muturi being the third in command is a very curious potential here. Now, if he's picked or settled on as William Ruto's running mate, can he ably consolidate the entire central Kenya, including the Upper Eastern, where he comes from? Well, as a matter of fact, the populous Upper Eastern will stick by J.B. Muturi if he's settled on. But now it will be as a challenging game to manage the aspirations, the interests of the wider central Kenya, of the Kikuyu central Kenya, if at all they don't have one of their own there. Unless, for example, Raila Odinga settles on an Kikuyu as well. Then in being lost in the wilderness, they will have to settle for the better person that they think they're most comfortable with. And because of the history of Raila Odinga with central Kenya, then he will stand to lose if at all none of them settles on Anan Kikuyu. They will easily then move like locusts to support William Ruto.
Yeah.
If Raila Odinga settles on Kalonzo Musyoka, as a matter of fact, then the entire Ukambani nation will be at peace with Raila Odinga. And then they will possibly vote to a man for Raila Odinga. But what then will that future portend for the wider central Kenya? They want a stake in the governance. The issue that they have a candidate for governor for Nairobi does not appease them enough, because at the national level is where the cake is distributed, and they'll want to be a part of that. And so therefore, looking at all this, the other thing that each of the presidential candidates will want to consider is this. If they settle on either of these, will they do no harm to their candidature? What kind of harm will, for example, Peter Kenneth portend for a Raila president candidature? Now, he's considered largely elitist. The ordinary Kikuyu does not identify with Peter Kenneth. And so because of the bourgeois kind of inclination, he will be far removed from representing or perceptively representing the interests of the ordinary Kikuyu. To that extent, the candidature of Peter Kenneth may do political harm to Raila Odinga, the same way the candidature of Sarah Palin did a bit of harm to John McCain in 2008.
I don't think that's true.
As a matter of fact,
I'll give you a chance to respond.
Perceptively, that's what I said. And we know politics is about perception.
Yeah.
Because looking at it, you'll realize that Charity Ngilu is perceptively considered in touch with the grassroots, with the people, as compared to Peter Kenneth, as a matter of fact. Now, that's political perception. Looking on the other side, you'll realize that Rigathi Gachagua is considered in touch with the masses far much more, for example, than J.B. Muturi, in terms of engaging the people. And if it's a question of stirring up the Central Kenya vote, would you think that between J.B. Muturi, Rigathi Gachagua, and Anne Waiguru, that J.B. Muturi has got the ability to stir the masses far much better than Anne Waiguru or than Rigathi Gachagua? No, I cannot respond to that in the affirmative. Considering that, then, the presidential candidates here will not just want to pick a candidate that looks good in the camera and the photos. They want to have a candidate that helps them to win. Raila Odinga's primary interest in this election is to win. William Ruto's primary interest in this election is to win. And not just a question of saying, let me balance the interests, or let me just have a checkmate for the other.
Okay.
So because of that primary interest to win, which is the only thing that has sent them into this quest, then they must settle on a candidate that can help stir up the masses. Okay. Remember that as we're speaking right now, majority of Kenyans have made up their mind based on the presidential candidates on which side they are in. Those who are in Kenya Kwanza are on that side purely because of William Ruto, primarily right now. Those on the side of Azimio are there because of Raila Odinga primarily. And so the choice of a running mate, while it's politically consequential, will not be so huge to the extent that now it will determine the fortunes of either side.
Is that true, Omolo? I think can the choice of a running mate potentially tilt the entire vote?
The choice, like for instance, let's see.
Yeah.
If DP Ruto picks Musalia Mudavadi as his running mate, then Azimio can possibly get 50% of Mount Kenya votes. Because what will it be in it for the people of Mount Kenya if Ruto picks on Musalia Mudavadi? And Musalia Mudavadi comes from the Western region, which is predominantly Azimio.
Yeah.
Even if he is picked as a presidential running mate, that might add maybe some 4 or 3% of the votes of Western region to the DP Ruto's camp. But it will not do much. So it matters. There are a few statements that have been made about Peter Kenneth that is up there in a very high pedestal, that is not in touch with the ordinary people. I think that's false, because let's look at who is Peter Kenneth. Forget not that Peter Kenneth once guided the Football Federation of Kenya, which is a grassroots-based organization. Number two, Peter Kenneth has served successfully as an MP for his people in Gatanga, and it is only then that he raised this name Gatanga to the national map. Every time you try to drive past Thika, you see that sign of Gatanga, and what records in your mind is Peter Kenneth. And during his time, the management of CDF in that place was wonderful. Peter Kenneth, again, something that he brings, if Azimio is to settle on Peter Kenneth, look at the man's demeanor. He's a very cool guy. We don't expect him to be a troublemaker. We don't expect him to be a cantankerous man who wants to throw tantrums. Then the other thing that is important that we need to bring out, governments exist to create opportunities and a conducive environment in which ordinary Kenyans can earn their living and meet the desires of their hearts. While Raila has it so much, the capacity to do the political part, Peter Kenneth has also spent a lot of time in the corporate environment. We require the private sector to also thrive in this country, to create opportunity and to drive innovation and the drive that we will require to lead the East African region and also send Kenyans across the world. Peter Kenneth brings in that experience, hands-on in the financial sector, and even in the manufacturing sector where he has been. And that's why I keep repeating that all these faces you see on the Azimio side, there is something they bring on board, so that what remains then is for, I don't know why you guys think that the vetting committee that has been put into place is not going to take all this into account. As we speak now,
Kalonzo is not even going to turn up.
If Kalonzo doesn't want to turn up, then he simply applies for exemption. You know, if you're doing a degree program and you think you've already done some very good diploma courses that need to be considered, you apply for exemption, then we see. If you're exempted, fine and good. If we don't exempt you, then you still have to go through the process. But you can see the difficulty in this thing. So if Azimio Council decides that let's pick a panel of experts who also have the moral approval of society. You see the kind of people who are there. Archbishop Njenga, you can see, Bishop Zakia Zokot. All these folks are credible people who have moral approval of society. So let them vet for us whoever they recommend. They may recommend 1 or 2 names. Then now, taking into account political considerations, we pick one person. But to say that Kenyans have completely made up their minds so that the pick of the DP no longer matters, I don't think that is tenable.
All right. Mutuma, what do you think?
Well, I think it is true. Most Kenyans have already made up their mind on who they are going to elect as president.
And the running mate
position is not going to change much. What it will do is to add up to the, from the undecided votes.
Yeah.
So that will help to that extent. But to claim that if Ruto picks a certain running mate, then he loses, I don't think that is true. If Raila Odinga picks so-and-so as running mate, he will lose. I don't think that that's proper. Secondly, on the issue of the selection panel, to be honest, I don't think it's fair to the aspirants for them to be subjected to the process of interview through a panel. Because number one, we've seen, for example, in Azimio, them claiming that this is a 3-legged stool, meaning that there were certain boardroom deals that were entered into before they joined Azimio. Yeah. So how then do we subject ourselves to a different panel to elect for us a running mate position? I think the reason why Azimio might be going that route is to, number one, save face and to avoid responsibility, so that whatever outcome, whoever is picked as running mate, Raila will have a very easy task of saying, look, I'm not the one who chose that. I'm not the one who did not choose you. So I think he's just looking for that exit so that he doesn't get a lot of backlash from the people they promised those positions.
Yeah, but we gamble from a perception point of view. If Kalonzo Musyoka does what Philip is saying, that apply for exemption, then is exempted, how do you justify taking the rest through the vetting process? Because they might as well say, okay, if you can exempt so I should be exempted as well.
To be picked as a running mate is the primary choice, interest, and desire of the presidential candidate. Hard-headedness does not pay any dividends here. And actually that now makes even the path harder for Kalonzo Musyoka. Now, remember that we do not have a particular structure or tradition and mechanism for picking a running mate in Kenya. Azimio has chosen, having in place this technical committee or technical team. The side of Kenya Kwanza have not been clear about how they are going to select that. And that's proper. We don't have a particular mechanism. In 1992, in the United States of America, Bill Clinton settled on Warren Christopher, a consultant, to reach out as an emissary on various potential candidates for running mate. And in other times, even Joe Biden, etc., Barack Obama, had the campaign team forming a smaller inner committee to vet the persons that will be running mates. And then in the end, they recommend to the candidate. The persons that the team recommends, or the person that the team recommends, the presidential candidate has got a right to see whether they merit or do not merit. Remember, I talked about the issue of chemistry.
Yeah.
And because of that, the issue of Kalonzo Musyoka then becomes very exciting and curious. That as he does this, and remember he's on record having indicated that he has negotiated with the President Kenyatta and not with Raila Odinga. Is he going to be Uhuru Kenyatta's running mate? Uhuru Kenyatta is not a candidate in this election. So he needs actually to demonstrate the interest to work with Raila Odinga, the chemistry, and the desire to support the candidature of Raila Odinga, not to be a possible inhibitor substance in that quest.
Yeah.
Now, even as we're looking at all these things, there is something that seems to be slipping through the fingers with respect to the access to information about these individuals that this committee, for example, in Azimio, is going to get from this private information, whether about family, about businesses, about private life affairs. And the issue is, we have not seen any signing of non-disclosure agreements between the presidential candidates or possible running mates and the political party or coalition. Because as we know, as a matter of fact, Article 31 of the Constitution protects the right to privacy, especially Section C, Part C of the Article 31 of the Constitution, which has moved to be codified by the Data Protection Act 2019. Now, when you look at the principles of data protection in Section 25 of the Data Protection Act and the rights of the data subject as provided for in Section 26 and moving all the way to Section 46 of the Data Protection Act, it should interest us as a people and as a country, and especially these running mate candidates, that how is the information about them that's going to be sourced, whether it's about matters taxation, about their private business affairs, etc., and the disposition of that information after this exercise is done, because the right to privacy is very sacrosanct in this country and all over the world.
Okay.
So I want to hope that as the committee of Azimio is vetting all these individuals, they have a mechanism of protecting the right to privacy and data that they are going to collect, whether submitted in written or orally from these candidates, and how they're going to dispose of that information after this.
Okay.
But beyond that, I think it's also very important for Kenyans to get to know, at least here in Kenya, we know that all these candidates are possible deputy presidents or running mates. Now, we have seen Raila Odinga on the campaign trail with Martha Karua. We have seen him on the campaign trail with Charity Ngilu, with Peter Kenneth. We have seen Deputy President William Ruto on the campaign trail with Kithure Kindiki, with Rigathi Gachagua, with Musalia Mudavadi, with JB Muturi. And of course, we have seen various engagements and meetings with Governor Anne Waiguru. So already we can come to a conclusion that the leading presidential candidates in this country, Raila Odinga and William Ruto, already have got perceptions, interactions, and determination on whether there is chemistry or lack of between themselves and these potential running mates. Okay. And in their minds, I am sure William Ruto knows who best serves as a running mate, and Raila Odinga right now, contrary to position held by Philip Omolo here, Raila Odinga knows who is it, between himself and President Kenyatta, who is it that they have settled on as the running mate for Azimio. So
this vetting panel for you is a PR show?
Well, it's not just a PR show. It is a performance at the marketplace, merely for the onlookers. But behind the curtains, it is settled. This matter is settled in Azimio.
Okay.
I think Javas Bigambo, of course, is very wrong. When you talk about the people who are sitting on that panel, do not cast aspersions as to their capacity to vet people. You are already giving some criteria that they should use to vet. Who tells you that they have not taken those into account? They are sitting there. They have been given a mandate. When you're formed as a committee, you're given terms and references that you're going to use to do that vetting. You can hear what council has raised here, that there are issues. If you look at the Constitution, what it says about the qualifications of the person who becomes a deputy president, how do you expect these presidential candidates who are ever on their feet running around to gather votes to do that thorough vetting? You know, it's actually paradoxical that Javas goes out of his way to tell us how Bill Clinton reached out to consultants in 1992 to help him get a running mate. He's also elaborately explained how President Barack Obama had a committee to vet the people who could be his running mate. But when it comes to Azimio doing the same, he quickly dismisses it as a PR or a performance at the marketplace. That tells you that he is inconsistent in what he is saying. To put things right, there are things that we require from a presidential running mate. And those things include constitutional requirements, there are also moral requirements, there are other legal requirements, and there's also the general legitimacy and approval by society. We also expect to see their past records. And to document it for the future generations to see that when we picked a person of this caliber, he either succeeded or failed Kenyans, you know. So do not belittle this committee of eminent personalities who have served in Kenya in various places, and they have the moral approval of the people of Kenya. So keep your calm. Between 2nd and 10th of May, our candidates are going to appear before this committee, and we'll have a file on each of them. Their potential, their capacity to bring votes across the country, their capacity to serve as functional deputy president, their cleanliness in as far as corruption case. By the way, one of the critical consultants for Kenya Kwanza has been on record saying that Kenya Kwanza is not running on anti-corruption platform. I think we are all aware of that. That they are not pretending to come forth and fight corruption. To the contrary, Azimio, and in particular Raila Odinga, has been clear since his time in politics that corruption is the monster that destroys and eats away the capacities of the children of this country. And therefore, that is something that we are taking into account. If somebody has a past corrupt record, then that is going to be a factor, even if they are the ones that are bringing the votes. But you can see on the other side, anything goes. They are not running on an anti-corruption platform, and that has been said by one of their critical advisors.
Mutuma, is that a fair statement? That is not a fair statement at all.
I don't think it's a fair statement. And I also refuse to believe that Raila Odinga will just sit and wait for a report from the selection panel and then, go by it. Because like I said, I mean, we're picking a spouse for him. We're not going to have, a selection panel bring a wife and tell you, we felt that among all the ladies that presented themselves for the interview, this is best suited to be your wife. I don't think that's the position. And that it could be true, right, rather, if that process was open, transparent, and available for scrutiny.
And transparent.
I don't think it will be done at the glare of the media for the people to know, what is the scorecard of each of the candidates. For as long as it is a private affair, I believe that Raila and the Azimio Brigade will always control it behind the scenes, and we may not be able to know exactly how each of these candidates performed. So for it to have made sense, I would have wanted the process to be in a manner that is akin to how we elect judicial officers, in the full glare of the cameras, so that we know, because why else then do we go through a selection panel if the masses and the public and supporters of Azimio are not given a chance to even scrutinize and understand why is it that it was Martha Karua as opposed to Kalonzo Musyoka?
Yeah.
Yes.
And Javas, realistically speaking, Raila Odinga, William Ruto, can they pick any other running mate apart from someone from either Central, Eastern, or Western, if they are to gather votes?
Well, the primary thing here is to gather sufficient votes to help them win the election. And in this 2022 general election, Central Kenya's populace vote without a chieftain from that area contesting the presidency makes it, the bride that everybody desires to have. And that is why Central has dominated discussion as the region that's going to pick the possible running mate for both these individuals. They can, of course, pick a running mate, each of them, from other parts of the country. It's possible, and that's why on the side of Azimio, we've had names such as Governor Joho, etc. And Governor Joho comes from the coast. But the thing is this, realistically, given that the coast is nearly under the comfortable control of Raila Odinga, close to 60–70%, then it does not necessitate picking Joho at the expense of getting votes from Central Kenya. Though Joho is a ferocious campaigner and having successfully led Mombasa for 2 terms, Mombasa County, then that wealth of experience is also good. Remember that Joho also has got an acceptable appeal in many parts of the country, and so that will be a plus. But beyond this appeal, political appeal that Joho has, appeal by itself alone will not guarantee Raila Odinga's votes and support from Central Kenya, which he so much desires. Today, Raila Odinga dropped Tim Wanyonyi as a candidate for governor from ODM for Nairobi because he wants to appease and wants the support of one, President Kenyatta, and to the Central Kenya. Other than that, Raila Odinga would have stuck with Tim Wanyonyi as the candidate for ODM and possibly Azimio, because Tim Wanyonyi, of all the candidates that were contested for governor, was the most experienced politically, best placed, and in fact would have even affirmed the position of Azimio as an entity that believes in equality rights. Tim Wanyonyi having been the possible candidate to be governor, being disabled, the first abled person that's disabled to govern Nairobi. But Raila Odinga gave that up because he wanted to get the support of Mount Kenya and not to actually displease President Kenyatta.
Yeah.
In the issue of the running mate as well, President, it's on record here, and even the dailies have carried it in the past, that the position, the interest of President Kenyatta will be quite critical in the settlement of the running mate. So it is possible that it is President Kenyatta who clandestinely will, of course, decide and propose to Raila Odinga who is it that will be his running mate because of various political interests.
Yeah.
And that's why I said that this vetting committee for Azimio, while it's doing an important job, it's not that they are going to determine who becomes Raila Odinga's running mate. It is beyond them.
Okay.
It is in other critical hands, Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta. And that's why I said that the same way all these aspirations of various gubernatorial candidates for Nairobi, Tim Wanyonyi having topped the list, he was betrayed at the last minute by Raila Odinga because Raila Odinga had to stand with the issues of the interests of Azimio fraternity, primarily President Uhuru Kenyatta. The same way, it is President Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga who have already possibly determined who is it that is going to be Raila Odinga's running mate. So, for example, Polycarp Igathe being a Manchurian candidate in this election for gubernatorial race for Nairobi is the same way Azimio is going to have a Manchurian candidate for Raila Odinga's running mate.
Okay. I think, Philip, do you agree with that? Because realistically speaking, and you people have been in the political field for quite some time, is it obvious that whoever wants to win this ticket then has to get someone from the Mount Kenya region based on the numbers purely?
No, but you know, Javas has a tendency to make some exceptionally wild allegations. Extremely wild. Like, for instance, you hear what he's just said about Tim Wanyonyi. Tim Wanyonyi was running for Nairobi governorship on ODM. And I don't think he had done exceptionally way better than Richard Ngati had also done even for the same seat on Jubilee. Now, the Azimio fraternity, unlike Kenya Kwanza and all these other political outfits, there is a belief in processes. So people sat down, serious negotiations were done, many things were considered, and a settlement was done on Polycarp Igathe. And, you know, who says that Polycarp Igathe is not an ambitious person? But more so, when the Constitution came in 2010, there was a strong belief by Kenyans that the position of governorship requires people with executive orientation, not oversight orientation like MPs and senators. And that's why in our first election, we got into office many people who had corporate experience and who had executive orientation. And even though they may not have performed perfectly, they help us to establish the fundamental structures of governance. Look at Peter Munya, for instance, in his first tenure as a governor in Meru. I don't know if you guys travel widely. He did his best. He established the structures that were... You come from Meru, so you must bear testimony to what I'm talking about. The town was very clean. The town, they did a lot. And then he also served as the chair of the Council of Governors. We saw how he was able to, despite coming from the Mount Kenya region, to hold President Uhuru Kenyatta and Ruto accountable for the disbursements that were required for the Council of Governors. So these fellows, there is something special that they bring on board. The same thing in Nairobi, Kidero. when he first served here. He helped us to establish these institutions. Then what happened? We brought in politicians. You remember we took some politician to Kiambu? What happened? He went there, made noise, he was impeached and thrown out. We brought another politician here in Nairobi County. You remember? He was called Mike Sonko. Now he has run away all the way to Mombasa. He wants to run there. He couldn't run these things. He was thrown out through impeachment. Now we are trying to bring back that corporate and executive orientation, and that's why Poly Kapigathe fits this bill. And let's not forget, there has been a strong argument in this country that, like in Nigeria and even in Somalia, if you go to Somalia, Mogadishu is a territorial seat for the federal government of Somalia. The same thing happens in Nigeria. Here in Kenya, there's been a strong argument whether Nairobi should be a Kawaida county or whether it should be the territorial seat for the national government. And I think, my personal view is that Nairobi ought to be the territorial seat of the national government because of the important roles it plays. And those important roles is why when we consider a candidate for Nairobi governorship, somebody like Polycarp Igathe fits the bill because of his corporate experience and executive orientation. Meanwhile, Tim Wanyonyi has already embarked on his campaigns for Westland's seat, which he is going to get against the interests and desires of Kenya Kwanza. And maybe that's why they are trying to say that...
Now, Trevor, reply here.
Yeah.
Philip has said that that's why we are bringing in the corporate look and feel in the politics. Who is this we that Philip is speaking?
The people.
No, not the we, the people. Because if it's about the people, then the people have to decide at the ballot, not in the boardrooms, not behind, not manipulation. Because here we are having puppeteers managing issues. Yeah. Now, Tim Wanyonyi has successfully served as a councillor in Nairobi, in the defunct county council system. He has served as Member of Parliament for Westlands for 2 terms. And in fact, if you are to compare the constituencies in Nairobi, Tim Wanyonyi has succeeded where many MPs have failed within the Nairobi constituencies. The other thing is this, and Philip Omolo here is a very good brain. I wonder why he cannot look at issues to do, for example, with equality rights, because equity is a critical thing here, and inclusiveness. Now, Raila Odinga is on record having spoken for issues of inclusivity, women, persons with disability. He has demonstrated that in the past by picking Isaac Mwaura in the past, nominating him, all right, and even, having served in Raila Odinga's as PM office.
Yes.
Why is it that Raila Odinga decided to betray that particular cause with respect to Tim Wanyonyi?
I don't
on the ground, first of all, of disability. But beyond disability issues, do you want to tell me that looking at the governance, the politics of Nairobi, Tim Wanyonyi having served as Member of Parliament for Westlands for 2 terms, and when you look at matters accountability legislation, that he does not understand issues of governance of Nairobi better than Polycarp Igathe. Polycarp Igathe, who ran away from that seat in far less than a year when the residents of Nairobi bestowed an opportunity upon him to serve as Deputy Governor for Nairobi under Sonko.
Okay.
Beyond that, we know very well that the gods of opportunity have always favored Polycarp Igathe. And that's why he has been always migrating like a wildebeest across various positions.
No.
Now, Philip, let's face it. Polycarp Igathe is not a bad man. But you see, does he have a vision for Nairobi? Has he spoken about that vision? Does he have an entrenched interest to make Nairobi better beyond that which will be placed upon his laps?
Yes.
He has not spoken about that.
Okay.
Tim Wanyonyi has.
All right, gentlemen, we are veering off the conversation. It was about it was about the running.
There is a lot of
before I take closing remarks.
There is a lot of focus on Mount Kenya.
Yeah.
And I think there is also an attempt to treat Mount Kenya as a block, as one unit, which is not true. It's not factual. So Mount Kenya, as we speak, has 3 entities. One, we have the Ukambani region, which easily is associated with Mount Kenya, but it's a complete different region. Then we have the central region, the Kikuyu community. Then we have Meru, Embu, Mbere. That's another region altogether. So a running mate come from the Mount Kenya.
Yeah.
I would say this, the Ukambani community is very clear. They want Kalonzo and no one else. But as to the central region, the Kikuyu community, I think William Ruto has made a lot of inroads in the Mount Kenya region, that is to say the Kikuyu community, and he has personally campaigned and reached out to voters not through their leaders, but individually, and seems to enjoy a lot of support from the Kikuyu community. So I don't think he needs to pick a running mate from Central Region for him to continue enjoying that support, as long as he's able to demonstrate that he will take care of their interest and that they will be part and parcel of his government.
Okay.
So for him, I do not think that it is necessary for him to pick a running mate from the Central Region. But then it will add up to him if he picks a running mate who is associated with the Mount Kenya community, not necessarily a Kikuyu running mate.
Okay.
Say Ameru, Embu. So JB Muturi and Professor Kindiki fits very well in that mathematics.
And Rigathi.
But and who else?
Rigathi Gachagua.
Rigathi is Kikuyu.
Yeah.
So that means he will still be considered, because William Ruto has already made his inroads in the Kikuyu community.
Yeah.
For Raila Odinga, I think there is a struggle for him to convince the Central Region that he will take care of their interest. And the only way he can convince them to do that, because he does not seem to have reached out to the voters, is by electing one of their own or putting him close to him so that they feel that they will be taken care of. When you look at his remarks yesterday, he said, do not worry about putting my posters in your posters. Even if you lose, I will still give you a job. So that means, really, the only way he gets to woo them is by putting a running mate in that position.
Okay, let me bring up the feedback really quick, and then we take closing remarks, a minute each, and close on this discussion. Queen Spacho says, clearly IBC Kenya said that any candidate to be picked as a running mate must have resigned by the time other people running were resigning. This technically eliminates a serving CS like Munya from the equation. Pretty, that's true. Chalo Woodrose, it's high time a woman should be made a running mate in Kenya. Her coming from Mount Kenya region will be an added advantage. Women have proved themselves to be worthy of leadership in this country. Let's see what else you're saying here. J.M. Musoma says, gender is not a prerequisite for a deputy president. The game of power is about numbers due to 50+1 and parliamentary strength. The question is, who among Karua, Waiguru, or Ngilu can bring that on a negotiation table? It's suicidal for Raila to drop Kalonzo. Okay. Let's see what else you're saying here. Ahmed Kadar says the huge number of presidential candidates and aspirants for other positions in ballot box, though most are jokers, is an indicator of how our politics turned into an avenue for quick personal gratification. Nothing like si, mimi, ni sisi. Wanjiku should vote wisely. Okay. That was Tim Wanyonyi's line there. Huza says leadership is a collective bargain and a collaboration of leaders with their citizens. This issue of power over matter is what is keeping Africa at bay. The quality of citizens determines the quality of elected individuals, all right? Let's see what you're saying on 22422 really quick as we wind up on this conversation. Mwalimu Patrick Butalanyi from Malava says, running mate headache in Kenya. What matters most is who will bring more votes, but not his efficiency. Okay. It's all about the votes there. Let's see what else you're saying here. Murage from Nyandarua says, if Raila picks Karua, Ruto should pick Waiguru. And if Raila picks Kalonzo, Ruto should pick Mudavadi. That shall be the best competition between Azimio and Kenya Kwanza. All right. Gentlemen, that's where we'll leave it for now. But Philip, let me give you a chance for very quick remarks, 30 seconds, closing remarks.
Yeah, I've had my colleagues talk about affirmative action and literally placing it above merit. I think while our constitution and all laws and morality expects that we must take care of diverse interests, especially through affirmative action, but the core of leadership is merit. What is good is that all the people who are possible running mates on the Azimio side, they are all meeting the merit required. We didn't talk about Munya, for instance, but we know he merits it. Kalonzo merits it. Peter Kenneth merits it. And Martha Karua merits it. And nobody has any doubt on Ngilu's capacity. So what remains is that let the Azimio committee work on it. Whoever they recommend as most suitable will be picked by the Azimio candidate and will hit the road.
All right.
Tim Wanyonyi is happily campaigning to regain his Westlands seat as we propel.
All right. Let's leave out Tim Wanyonyi on this, Mutuma.
Well, I think we now understand the true meaning of the position of a deputy president. So it's an exercise that should be taken with a lot of seriousness, because we know that position is the position that belongs to a president. It should be given to only a presidential material.
Okay.
So apart from the gender issue, I think let's look at the qualifications of each of these individuals and see, should anything happen to the president, are we comfortable having that person as a president in this country?
Okay. Bigambo.
Well, this morning, Trevor, in this chair, I do not intend to take painkillers for the headache that is Raila's about choosing a running mate, or William Ruto's headache for choosing a running mate. But we are facing a moment no less epochal in this election. And looking at how the Jubilee fraternity, the Jubilee leadership of President Kenyatta and Deputy President William Ruto have played out their politics, it is important for us to say that we need a stable country, stable governance after this election. Who is it that will be that man or woman that will merit to be a running mate and future deputy president for this country? Looking at that, we need to realize that ambition in itself is not a crime, except as we look at it through the eyes of Julius Caesar in his play. But we need a man or woman who is ready to be president of Kenya from day one, if at all anything happens to the president. But we need men and women, as deputy president and as president, who have got the good measure and the good sense to realize that, and properly fair-minded, that this country is not about their political interests, but about the governance, the future, and the interests of this country and the future generations.
All right. Javas Bigambo, political commentator, Philip Omolo, law governance and democracy expert, Elias Mutuma, advocate of the High Court. Thank you so much for all the feedback as well that you sent through at Trevor Mbiji at Citizen TV Kenya using the hashtag Daybreak. We're now taking a quick break. When you come back on health and lifestyle, they're talking about whether you're financially fit. And they're speaking to Amos Ngahu, that is Willis Bazuraburu, coming up in just a bit, all right? See you shortly.